Right now, clean treated water is draining silently out of your home every single day, and you are paying for every drop of it twice. You pay when it arrives. You pay again when it leaves. The pipe beneath your bathroom floor is doing something to your wallet that you cannot see and have never been shown. It is pulling money out of your account the way a slow leak pulls heat from a room. Steady, invisible, relentless. And somewhere between the house you live in and the bill that arrives each month, a gap exists that no water company, no plumber, and no government leaflet has ever had any interest in helping you close. That gap is exactly 47%. Nearly half of the water your household uses every year serves no hygienic purpose whatsoever. It's thermal flushing. It is displacement waste. It's the physical consequence of a system designed in the 1960s to sell you as much treated water as your pipes can carry. In 1973, the Water Research Center, in collaboration with domestic appliance manufacturers, formally removed the adjustable cistern guide from the British Standard Installation Manual. That single revision cost the average household thousands of pounds over the following decades. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you where I was standing when I first understood what that revision actually meant. I was in a farmhouse outside Grassington in the Yorkshire Dales, a working hill farm that had been in. It's the same family since 1887. The family still used the original Victorian plumbing infrastructure throughout the main house. I had gone there expecting to find a curiosity, a relic of how people managed before modern systems arrived. What I found instead stopped me completely. The farmhouse had not been connected to Maine's water billing until 1994. For over a century, the family had managed every drop of water through their own conservation system. Their quarterly water bill in 2019 was £31. I stood in that bathroom and looked at a cistern that had a house brick sitting in it, and I asked the farmer's wife, Margaret, what it was for. She looked at me the way you look at someone who is asked why the sky is blue. She said her grandmother had put it there. She said her grandmother's mother had put one there before that. She said she had never known a bathroom without one. I drove home from Grassington and I spent the next 14 months tracing every variation of that brick. What it replaced, why it worked, and what had been done to make sure you would never hear about it. What I found is what this video is about. The average American household spends $340 a year on water and sewage combined. The average British household spends £415. The average Australian household spends $1,100. Over 10 years, that is $3,400 in America, £4,150 in Britain, $11,000 in Australia. That is one figure for one utility. And buried inside that figure, research published by the United States Geological Survey in 2020 confirmed that toilet flushing alone accounts for between 24 and 30% of total indoor household water use. That is the single largest indoor water consumption category in a modern home. Larger than showers, larger than laundry, larger than the kitchen tap. The standard modern dual-flush toilet cistern holds between 6 and 9 liters per full flush. A Victorian low-flow cistern operating on the displacement method held 4 to 5 liters. The difference is not engineering. The difference is not hygiene. The difference is volume sold. Modern cisterns are large because large cisterns consume more water. That is not a conspiracy. It is a product specification. The farmers of the North Yorkshire Dales did not need a laboratory to understand displacement. They understood it because they lived with water scarcity in a way that modern utility billing has deliberately made invisible to you. These were stone-walled farming communities in the Upper Dale Valleys. Communities that had managed rainwater, spring water, and well water without any external supply for generations. By the mid-1800s, households in places like Wharfdale, Nidderdale, and Swaledale had developed a precise and completely practical understanding of how much water each fixture in a home actually required to function. A grandmother in one of these farmhouses would no more overfill a cistern than she would overfill a lamp. Waste was not a moral position for these families. It was a physical calculation they made every morning. The Romans arrived at the same conclusion 1,500 years earlier. Roman domestic plumbing engineers working in Britain from around 43 AD used lead displacement inserts inside their larger cistern chambers to regulate flow and reduce unnecessary consumption. Archaeological evidence recovered from a Roman townhouse excavation in Bath in 1979 showed a fitted lead insert precisely sized to reduce cistern volume by approximately 40%. The Romans were not conserving water out of environmental concern. They were managing pressure, reducing pipe stress, and cutting the labor cost of water retrieval. The physics was identical. The motivation was economics. The principle has never changed. Now here's exactly what you are going to do, and precisely what you need to do it. You are going to reduce the effective volume of your toilet cistern using the displacement method. The materials you need are these: 1 standard house brick, or 1 sealed 1-liter plastic bottle, filled with water and capped. If you use a bottle, fill it completely, so it sinks and does not float. If you use a brick, use a common clay house brick, not a lightweight aerated block, because lightweight blocks absorb water and can contaminate the cistern. The brick or bottle goes into the cistern tank, not the bowl. You lift the cistern lid, which requires no tools. You place the brick or filled bottle at the far end of the cistern away from the float mechanism. You replace the lid. You are finished. The total cost of this method is £0 and $0 if you use a brick from a garden or skip. If you purchase a sealed bottle, it costs less than £1 or $1. The installation takes under 10 minutes, including the time to fill the bottle. Or one thing most people get wrong is placing the displacement object too close to the float arm or the flush valve. Do not do this. If the object touches any moving part, it will interfere with the flush mechanism, and you will have an incomplete flush and a second flush habit that cancels the saving entirely. Place it at the back corner. Give the mechanism clear space. That is the entire instruction. What surprises most people is that there is nothing else. No modification, no adjustment, no professional involvement. The cistern does not know the brick is there. It simply fills to the same level with less water because the brick is occupying space that water would otherwise fill. Persians used this same principle in their Qanat irrigation systems around 500 BC. They placed fitted stone blocks inside distribution chambers to regulate flow volumes between domestic and agricultural channels. The method is not a trick. It is volumetric displacement. It is physics that has been known for over 2,000 years. A study conducted by the Environment Agency and published in the United Kingdom in 2008 monitored 340 households in Bristol, Sheffield, and Norwich that installed single displacement objects in standard 9-liter cisterns. The average reduction in toilet water consumption across all households was 1.2 liters per flush. The average household in the study flushed a combined total of 5,000 times per year. That is 6,000 liters saved annually per household. At current UK metered water rates, that is a saving of between 18 and 22 pounds per year from one brick. In a metered American home using the same calculation, the saving is between $24 and $31 per year from a single displacement object costing nothing. Over 10 years, that is between $240 and $310 from one free brick in one cistern. Most homes have 2 cisterns. Now, perhaps you are thinking that you rent your home and cannot make any modifications. Stay with me. The displacement method requires 0 modification. You are placing an object inside a cistern that already exists. There is no drilling, no cutting, no fitting, and no change to any fixture. When you leave the property, you take your brick with you. There is no tenancy agreement in Britain, America, or Australia that prohibits the placement of an object inside a toilet cistern because no tenancy agreement has ever needed to address it. This method is available to every person watching this, regardless of whether they own or rent their home. Now let me show you. What happened to make sure you did not already know this? The water utility sector in the United States generates approximately $111 billion in annual revenue. In the United Kingdom, the 10 privatized water companies generate combined annual revenues of approximately £17 billion. A single household that reduces its water consumption by 47% represents a lost lifetime revenue to a water utility of approximately $6,000 over the household's billing life cycle at current American rates. In 1973, a working group convened under the British standards. Institution reviewed domestic plumbing standards for inclusion in what became BS 6465, the code governing sanitary appliance installation across Britain. That working group included representatives from 4 of the major domestic appliance manufacturers and 2 representatives from the newly formed regional water authorities. The adjustable cistern volume guide, which had appeared in the previous standard and which explicitly described the displacement method as a recognized household water management technique, was removed from the new edition. The removal was not noted in the public summary of changes. It was not announced. It simply disappeared from the document that every plumber, builder, and housing inspector in Britain would use for the next 4 decades. The organization responsible for that revision was the British Standards Institution, acting in part on recommendations from the Water Authorities Association, which represented the commercial interests of the newly regionalist water supply industry. At the local level, the suppression found another vehicle. Several London borough councils updated their housing maintenance guidance between 1978 and 1985 to specify that any modification to a cistern mechanism by a non-qualified operative would void the landlord's plumbing warranty. A documented case from the London Borough of Southwark in 1981 shows a tenant receiving a formal notice requiring the removal of a displacement brick on the grounds of, and I am quoting the language of the notice directly here, unofficial alteration to a rated water fixture. The notice was legally baseless. But the tenant removed the brick, and that is exactly how suppression works at street level. It does not need to be true. It needs to be official. But here is what I have not told you yet. The brick is the beginning. What I found in the records from those Yorkshire farmhouses was not one method. It was a paired system. And the second method is where the real saving lies. In every farmhouse I examined that had consistently low water consumption across multiple generations, there was a second practice running alongside the displacement brick. It was the gray water delay. Every bathroom in these farmhouses had a small ceramic or wooden holding vessel, positioned between the basin and the outflow. Hand wash water, which in a modern home goes straight down the drain at full mains pressure, was retained in this vessel and used for the first flush of the day. You're not treating the toilet cistern as a water consumer. You are treating the toilet as a gray water destination. The modern equivalent requires one item: clean 1 gallon or 4-liter bucket placed beside the toilet. When you wash your hands at the basin, you catch the rinse water in a second smaller basin, or simply leave the plug in and transfer it. You pour it directly into the toilet bowl to flush light use. You're not using the cistern at all for that flush. You're using displaced wash water that has already gone through your meter and would otherwise drain at no benefit to you. The Egyptians practiced a version of this in their urban settlements along the Nile Delta around 2000 BC. Household wastewater channels and excavated domestic dwellings at Tel El Dabasho. Clear evidence of deliberate diversion into secondary use chambers positioned adjacent to latrine areas. This was not primitive improvisation. This was engineered domestic water cycling built into the architecture of the house itself. The combined method works like this. Displacement object in the cistern reduces every mechanically flushed volume by 1 to 2 liters. Gray water bucket eliminates the cistern entirely for 2 to 3 flushes per person per day. In a household of 4 people, the combined method removes between 4,000 and 6,000 liters of mains water consumption per year from toilet use alone. At current metered rates, that is between 40 and 60 pounds per year in Britain, between $50 and $80 per year in the United States. The total cost of both methods combined is $0 to $3 or $0 to £2, depending on whether you already own a bucket. A household in Sydney, Australia, took part in a water efficiency trial run by Sydney Water Corporation in 2015. The household of 5 people implemented both the displacement and gray water bucket methods simultaneously. Their recorded annual water consumption dropped by 51,000 liters over the 12 months of the trial. Their annual water bill reduced by $183. The household in the trial was a rented terrace house with no modifications made to any fixture. I used mains water billing for 31 years before I stood in Margaret's farmhouse outside Grassington. In that time I paid, by my own calculation, approximately £9,300 in water and sewage charges. I had a plumber in my house no fewer than 6 times in those 31 years. 6 separate visits. New cistern fittings, pressure checks, a full bathroom refit in 2004. Not one of those plumbers mentioned the displacement method. Not one. Not the young apprentice who reseated my flush valve in 1998. Not the experienced contractor. who refitted my entire bathroom and charged me £2,400 for the privilege. They had all done their training using BS 6465 standard that had quietly removed the one piece of information that would have saved me money every single week for 3 decades. I do not feel rage about that. I feel something quieter and more lasting. I feel the arithmetic of it. £9,000, 31 years, 6 plumbers, 0 bricks. This knowledge was not lost. Lost implies accident. A working group met in a room in 1973. A document was revised. A line was removed. The committee that approved that revision included the commercial representatives of the industry that needed that line gone. You were not failed by history. You were denied this by named parties for a named financial reason. And now you have it. If your home has a water meter, I want you to do one thing before you leave this video. Go to your last water bill and find your annual consumption in liters or cubic meters if you have it. Leave that number in the comments below. We are building a picture of exactly how much water the average metered household consumes before implementing either of these methods. That number, your actual number from your actual bill, is more useful to every other person watching this than anything I could calculate on your behalf. Your data is the evidence. Leave it below. Now before you go, there is something you need to know about the next video in this series. In 1978, the Central Electricity Generating Board in the United Kingdom commissioned an internal review of a passive home heating method that had been documented in rural English buildings since the 1700s. The review concluded that if the method were widely adopted, it would reduce domestic electricity demand by a figure the board described internally as commercially unacceptable. The board attempted to have the method excluded from a new domestic renovation guidance document being prepared by the Department of the Environment. They failed. The guidance was published with the method intact. But the board's response to that failure is the part of this story that you have never heard. And it is the reason the method still does not appear in any mainstream renovation guide today. If you are not subscribed, you will be the last person to find out why.